Hey, Mike, what do Kelly Slater and PT have in common?
I don't know. They're both world champs?
Nope, they both own Endless Summer box set.
Oh my God, rad. You guys, you can get it too. The link's in the show notes.
Welcome to the Stinky Booties podcast, where two old wankers talk about surfing and nothing. Here's your hosts, Mike and Bill.
Ow! Da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Wow. It's a special day here.
Yeah.
Stinky Booties.
Southern California's best surf and lifestyle podcast.
Yes.
You know, I've been lifestyling it.
And we're at quite a lifestyle place.
Yeah.
In Southern California.
Right now, the view right now is like, if you don't live in Southern California, today is the day that will make you want to sell everything to move here because it's about as nice as it gets.
It's a nice May.
It's not hot. It's not cold. It's sunny. It's beautiful. Look, birds around.
Quite a few.
Yeah. So,
And we have a very, very, very special guest with us today joining us
yeah, you know,
at the Stinky Booties.
so real quick though, before we get that, how do people reach us on Instagram?
The Stinky Booties.
Stinky Booties, or you can
DM us.
Yeah, or you can email at stinkybootiespodcast@gmail. Tell us how much you love us.
Yeah, please do.
Reaffirm our what our moms tell us, how great we are.
My
But,
mom passed away.
No. Well, so you mentioned a special guest. Let me walk through that a little bit. So I was lifestyling that you don't. Went fishing, tuna fishing, which you don't do. Another thing
Yeah.
you should do, but you're still my friend. And I'm sitting in the galley while we're fishing, or not fishing, but we're driving around, you know?
Yeah.
And in fishing, there's a lot of like people hanging out, just sitting around. I'm sitting there. I don't even know what happened, but some guy asked me a question and about surfing. And this guy sitting across from me just goes, I was surfing in 1952. And
Wow.
I immediately, like, all my alarm bells went off. And like, I'm like, all right, what had just happened right there? I wasn't even born until 1969. So this guy had been surfing for 17 years by the time I showed up. So anyway, that's our guest today. I get to talking to him. It's Jim Hoch. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Jim, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's great.
We're in the Jim Hoch studio in Carlsbad.
Yeah.
Not in our studio in Oceanside, but we're in the Carlsbad studio now.
Yeah.
But
Nice breeze.
yes.
Beautiful backyard.
Yeah. So Jim and I got to talking and he started telling me some stories. I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, immediately, you got to come on the show and tell people these stories because this is history that people don't know about surfing.
So right at the beginning, Jim, the first thing I have to ask you is, what got you into surfing?
Well, I think it was my parents always putting me on the beach every day when I was a young kid, under 10 years old, and growing up in Manhattan Beach, California, my hometown. And if I sat around the house more than 10 minutes, wasn't doing something, my mom said, get to the beach, go to the beach. And so I was down there. And back in those days, the foam surfboards weren't around. The only thing we had were fiberglass balsa boards. And so I was fortunate enough to have a friend who lived close to the beach that had a 11-foot plank, as they called it. And I was 8 years old, and two of my other buddies, and we would drag this thing across the sand of Manhattan, and we'd wade out to about waist-deep water and turn it around, and one of us would lay down, and the other two guys would push us into a wave and would yell, stand up. And then we started riding waves. And that was just an evolution from boogie boarding. Well, it wasn't a boogie board. We called them belly boards in those days, canvas mat riding. So we went from belly boards to riding to standing up on surfboards. And that was in 1952.
That's crazy. Those were those inflatables, those like inflatable, like a pool, but they're a little thicker, right? Like something you'd ride in a pool.
Yeah, well, the ones that we had back then, you could still buy them and so forth. They're just a very heavy canvas, and we'd blow them up at a gas station, get them bulletproof. Then they'd sit in the sun, they'd be rock hard, and we'd go out on our knees on them all the time. And then we went from riding on our knees to standing up on them, going down the faces of big waves. That was a lot of fun.
Wow.
But then all of a sudden we got into surfing, and we realized that there were guys that were a couple of years older than us that Yeah, these all balsa wood boards, and they said Velzy Jacobs on them. And I said, that's interesting. And then I realized that, but actually, I know where the shop is, and this was down at the Manhattan Beach Pier before Dale and Hap really had full-blown board productions. And so this little place is now a taco shop right there on the Manhattan Beach Pier, same location. And I'd go up there and look in the window, and I'd see these guys. There was no electric planes or anything. It was just guys with draw knives and big hand planes. And so they'd just shove these things back and forth. And I'd talk to them, and I'd say, what do you mean? We're making surfboards. And so I started seeing my first surfboards then. Hap Jacobs was nice enough to let me sweep up. I get to sweep up the balsa shavings.
Wow.
How old were you at the time?
I think it was... I was probably 7 or 8.
Wow.
And,
just a little grom.
Just, the only reason...
No child labor laws then, huh?
No, and then I think I was about 19 now. It had to have been early 50s, mid 50s. My dad and I went up to because he knew I really wanted to surf. I was borrowing everybody at the surfboard, and my parents always wanted me at the beach anyway for be safe and be in the ocean. So I ended up at the Venice, Hap Jacobs, actually it was called the Velzy Jacobs Venice shop in Venice, California, before there was ever Marina del Rey or anything. There was just oil wells all over the place. And that's where I saw them actually making really good quality boards, Hap and Dale Velzy. So this is where I got to buy my first used all balsa wood Velzy Jacobs surfboard. And luckily, my dad was really well skilled in the use of polyester resin and fiberglass and building boats with my dad in the garage, that we kept my first board for $25 in good repair. So I was stoked. And back in those days, we'd always say, we'd go out and ride a wave and say, well, I angled today.
You angle. Oh, that's like going down the line.
Yeah, that's going left. It didn't say I went left or I went right. But I angled today, not a straight off, 8 off anymore.
Did you guys have fins then to the boards?
Yeah, all the boards are very glassed on fins.
The big ones?
Well, they were a good size. And the technology and the sense of experimenting with size and shapes and surface area hadn't come in. But it was also a process of evolution and so forth.
Like a big D fin?
Yeah, a big D fin, stuff like that. I think the biggest of those D fin boards was when I surfed on a Simmons spoon years ago, too. And they were really something fabulous, in a sense of very lightweight. That was when boards were trying to get to be lighter in weight, because most of what we had in those days was 35 to 40-pound boards.
Wow. How many other surfers were in the water?
Well, let's see, we would go down to the beach. I lived at 23rd Street, Manhattan Beach, and I'd look all the way down to the Manhattan Pier, which is about 1.5 miles away, and there'd be maybe 3 guys in water.
Wow.
And,
just like today.
Yeah.
No different.
Yeah. Or I'd look north all the way up towards El Porto, and way up El Porto there, it was Standard Oil Pier, and you look up there, maybe see 1 or 2 guys in the water up there, but all of a sudden, groups started to form, and the small groups were little, as we call cliques and little hangouts. And where I hung out, what I was referred to as a 24th Streeter, because that's where we walked down to the water. Yeah. And then just up the beach was guys on the other side of, or on both sides of the Manhattan Pier, and then further on up, the guys in Hermosa Beach, 22nd Street guys, the double deuce danglers, as they were called. All sorts of groups started to form up around the Redondo Breakwater, and then we started branching out and surfing places too, like Palos Verdes Cove. So it was just seeing it every year. There was more people in the water every year, more people.
And were those groups was everybody cool with each other? Like, oh, you're with double deuce hangers, and you had come over. Like, was everybody cool, or was there kind of like a little rivalry?
Oh, there was always what group was better group. And
really?
And so majority of us all went to the same high schools. And so I went to Maricosta High School. Most of the guys who were really the fledgling super surfers, superstars, those that came out of Maricosta or Redondo Beach High School, they kind of, we'd get together and have a surf off, and somebody be sitting on the beach. They say, well, oh, so-and-so, he got the best waves today. And my guys over there, they got better waves. And so next thing started to develop was the clubs, the surf clubs up and down the coast. And back in the, we'd have to be in early 60s, 61, 62. I got out of high school in 62. The primary surf clubs then was the Malibu Surf Club and in the north part of the Santa Monica South Bay. Then was the group I was involved, which was Dapper Dan Surf Club. And that was Manhattan Beach. And then there was the Haggerty's, which is still very, very popular. Haggerty Surf Team Club is still going.
Yeah.
And Long Beach Surf Club. Yep. And then La Jolla, which was Wind and Sea. Constantly got together for different kinds of contests in those different areas. And each team was of a group in area had to put on an activity.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun.
What was your guys' activity? What did you guys do? Essentially,
we just get everybody together at Marine Street in Manhattan, 24th Street. We'd always get out in the water and, we didn't really have heats. We just had a bunch of guys out in the water watching other guys surf. And they said, oh, look at so-and-so, he got a better wave than that guy did. So somebody, and there was never any animosity to one person to the other person. And then at this time, too, is when different board manufacturers really started showing up. Not only the Jacobs boards, but then also Dewey Weber's boards started showing up a lot. And then in Santa Monica area, the Owl, Owl was up in Santa Cruz, but then there were all sorts of guys coming out of Santa Monica building boards, starting to build boards then too.
Wow.
And
what year is this around?
Well, this would be, mid-60s.
Okay.
And
so you already had 10 years of surfing then?
Yeah. From the southern area was the big thing was Hobie. Hobie surf course, really, really big name, big push. And all of the guys, a lot of the guys on the Wind and Sea surf team were all Hobie guys for quite a while. Yet, everyone just kind of came and blossomed out when you looked at like Robert August. He and I were on the same surf team together, Jacobs, and we had all sorts of fun times. And Donald Takayama, we were always close buddies, and we were always going off on a local surf trip somewhere to surf some not unheard of, but yet not overrun spot.
Wow.
Go overrun us. Yeah.
Because it was kind of wide open back then, right?
Oh, yeah. It was really good. We knew when a swell was coming, where to go. And if it was wintertime and we heard that it was really windy and nasty up in San Francisco, we say, wow, RainCon's going to be good in a couple of days. Or if we heard, nothing's happening right here, but it's summertime, and somebody say, yeah, but there's some, as we call them, chubascos off of Mexico, then we say, well, let's go to San Onofre. Our big thing back then in the early 60s was getting a parent to drive us anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, late 50s, early 60s. So we'd throw 6 or 7 boards in a car, and one mom would drive.
Wow.
And we'd primarily go to Huntington Beach, the Huntington Beach Pier, and what we call Bolsa Chica or Tin Can Beach.
Yeah. A couple questions. One question straight comes to mind is, was Manhattan a better wave than it is today?
Well, today it's an awful, terrible wave. And back then, it was still considered a terrible wave. They felt that if you could surf good in Manhattan Beach, you could surf anywhere great. And it was kind of proof. But yet, right now, almost all the surfing in the South Bay is up around El Porto and that area there. And what happened was years ago, when they still had, before Marina del Rey was ever developed, all the sand that came out of all the area from Marina del Rey was dumped on the beach.
Yeah.
And that sand then moved down by the currents and the weather and just destroyed all our local surfing spots, basically, in Manhattan and Hermosa. What it did was it made such a really steep berm that as soon as the tide came in, it canceled the waves. And unless it was a really big swell, you lost a lot of your waves. And then when Playa del Rey was really a big, long beach, that was also referred to as there was a good spot there called D&W, which supposedly stood for Dewey Weber and Doyle. Doyle and Weber, the first two guys to surf this right-hand jetty break. And again, it was only a winter spot.
Okay.
Yeah. So
how was La Jolla? I'm sorry, not La Jolla. Palos Verdes Cove.
Oh, fabulous. I've probably heard the stories about the Dominator, the ship that went aground out there back in the early 60s. And we would get a ride, parents give us to the cove, and we didn't have wetsuits or anything. And we'd put on our tennis shoes and walk down with our blankets to stay warm. We spent a whole day there flipping over the rocks, frying off abalone, making abalone burgers.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the only way we'd stay warm is we'd light a fire on the beach. But yet, for a wave that broke a long way out the cove, the PV Cove, it was actually called Bluff Cove, too.
Okay.
And then just around the corner from it was Haggerty's surf.
So
point,
indicators,
yeah.
Haggerty's.
Well, indicator was way out at the far end of the cove. You sit there and you see sets coming out, and they call it indicator because here comes the set.
Right.
And but yet the problem with there was back in those days, we didn't have any leashes or anything. Our boards were heavy, so we'd always double carry down. And we'd end up with a lot of long swims to the beach.
Jeez, cold water too, with no
cold
wetsuit.
water and no wetsuits and no sand. You get up, you're doing the rock dance no matter where you were. And so
the first, what I heard, the first contests were just super sessions.
Yeah.
Like that. Hey, why don't we do that instead of having
Good
playing
vibes.
needs? Like everybody just go
Kind of good
surf.
vibes.
Yeah.
Like go have a day. Everybody's just surfing and see how it goes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we can say who did best.
It was, especially when we had like the Malibu contest, because we'd have the Malibu contest, we'd have the Malibu Surfing Association, and there were a lot of really good guys in that group. Then also the guys come up from La Jolla was Butch Van Arsdalen and also big name guys, and they would be nasty in the water if they didn't get enough waves.
Oh, really?
But somebody just hand Butch a beer and say, hey, you'll be okay.
That calmed him down.
Yeah. And I'd say the most notorious group for being, notorious group is these doggone crows.
Crows are attacking. It's a Hitchcock movie.
Yeah, I know. But we'd make trips all the way up to Santa Cruz and surfing contests there. And La Jolla guys, Wind and Sea, they'd come up in a big bus. And of course, they cocktailed all the way back. And that's how we knew.
I've heard stories.
Did you know a Wind and Sea guy named Henry Hunt?
No, I don't think I knew.
Okay, he was a Wind and Sea guy from way back in the day.
Well, when I first moved back down here from being in the Sierras for many years as a ski race coach and back to the beach for lifeguarding in the summer times, I worked and built houses in La Jolla, and one of my employer, his son, Danny, I started him surfing, and he went pro and everything and became a president of the La Jolla area's Wind and Sea Surf Club. So we have a lot of history with that, and I'd go in there and see a lot of their old guys who, I remember you from, we used to go and drink beers at Malibu, and
Wow.
all that stuff.
Was it a party scene? Was it all based around a party?
It always was most of the time, always based on a party.
Okay.
And so we would come down here to surf La Jolla Shores. We were really like that. The Dapper Dans did, and there was a really good surfer named Bob Dill. And there was a girl surfer who blew our doors off named Margot Godfrey.
Oh, yeah.
Margot was
Margot Oberg.
Yeah, Margot Oberg. Well,
Later on, too.
Yeah.
She got married.
We'd sit on the beach in La Jolla Shores and watch her ride waves. We couldn't believe how good she was. And then we'd go back to somebody's house right there on the beach, and we'd all throw out our sleep bags and sleep on the front porch, or sleep on the grass. And we get up and surf the next day and then go home. So it was a lot of fun times.
Did you ever have any of those when the clubs were surfing? Was Mickey Dora ever around?
Oh, yeah.
How was he?
Well, the cat.
The cat was the cat salty, as they said.
He was nasty.
Really?
And he was sponsored by, and his primary board that was named after, him, the cat, and was done by Greg Knoll. And so he was a Greg Knoll surf team guy, or of Greg Knoll's group. And yet when we'd be surfing at Malibu, if you took off and you were in a wave in front of Mickey Dora, he'd just sneak right up on you and just go, book.
Just eject you?
You're gone. And so I say, he was probably notorious for being, is the term we use, a little aggro in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And
what about a couple other names? Let's throw some names out there. What about like Kemp or Danny Alberg?
Oh, Danny Alberg and Kemp Alberg brothers.
Yeah,
I knew them both and surfed with them both. Kemp just recently passed away.
He did, yeah.
His primary emphasis that he was a fantastic flamenco guitarist.
Yes.
Plus a surf style that was just unique in its own too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that arch, the picture of the Surfer magazine, the arch, Was he the first guy doing that, or were
He
there
was the
others?
first guy that was photographed at doing that, and then then there was another guy that was in our group about the same time frame named Paul Bauer, dropping into a big, I think it was a Hawaii wave somewhere.
Wow. Airplanes, crows.
Hey, we're in a jungle here.
we should get a leaf blower in on the mix, like or a lawnmower. Let's go full circle.
I could go turn on my dog over there. See the skeleton dog? I have an on-off switch on that he howls.
Oh,
It makes howling noise, so he could be our background howling.
Might as well. I mean,
yeah, dang.
So, just more of the names. I mean, this is like the history of. These are the people that, including yourself, that really created and made sure that what surfing is today actually became a real sport. It wasn't just a fad that came and went.
Let me stop you right there.
Okay.
We're going to go back to your thing with what Bill just said. What do you think of surfing today, as opposed to you kind of paved the way for all of us today and to where it is today?
Well, I think that we'd have a lot less aggression within the youth today if more kids surfed and learned about sharing and sharing what the ocean is. And I think that's the biggest thing. I'd like to see more emphasis based on that, because I know that we learned a lot about the ocean and generally waves, but yet also exchange so much good times with each other, whether I was here or it's like learning the etiquette. One of the things that really frustrates me now with surfing is the lack of etiquette.
Yeah.
So you say, well, what's the cause of that? And I said, well, it's simple, Costco. And they go, what do you mean Costco? And I said, well, look at all those soft funds boards, Wavecrest. I said, they've sold thousands of those boards, but they didn't bother to sell them with a little sheet underneath that said what ocean etiquette's all about.
No owner's manual.
Yeah. But yet there are a few places that I've been up and down the coast, especially in Santa Cruz and also in Morro Bay in that area. They'll have a plaque on a beach that where the surfers primarily enter and exit the water, and it's just basic etiquette rules.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Red Con does it.
Well, so the two things. One thing you said was about kind of the surfing being something that could possibly really contribute to really the culture of young children today, because there's that one thing when you surf and you meet someone else who surfs, you immediately share a love for something. Whether you could be from anywhere in the world, if you surf and you meet someone anywhere else in the world who surfs, you immediately have something,
a bond.
You understand each other in a way because you both fell in love with the same thing, and that, I think that's you're almost brothers and or brothers or sisters immediately, from that standpoint. So, I mean, I think there's that. But, also one thing, too, is regarding the manual about the foamies and stuff. One of the things that I do is I've been, because I surf harbor a lot. So we get a lot of just Griswolds that are in Airbnbs and
Barneys.
And I'll see people out that are just.
Jim said that.
I'm surprised. But I'll see people out there just, you tell they're completely clueless.
Oh, yeah.
But
all the time.
I'll paddle up and be like, hey. You're where are you from? And I'll start talking to them. I'm like, hey, can I just give you a 30-second download on not only how to not get hurt, but how not to hurt someone else, and also how to actually get up, because I'm watching you and you're never going to get up doing what you're doing. And just kind of, give them a little quickie. And I mean, most of the time they're like, I'm not most of the time, all the time, they're like, oh my gosh, thanks, because I've been trying this all week and I can't figure it out.
Yep.
And it's like, just kind of throw them a bone.
Well, when I first retired 13 years ago from building houses, I had a sign on the side of my truck and it said "Next Level Surfing." And then I have a card that I give to people, and it would say, are you struggling? And why are you not riding every wave you take off on? And so I would get a lot of parents who wanted their son or daughter to build some skill, but they surf with their dad, but who wants to listen to their dad?
Right. And their dad may be a clown too.
And so, and dad didn't have a clue half the time. So that helped a lot. But what I would, really frustrating to me, like you say, I would be riding a really good wave and have guys still paddling for the same wave I'm riding. And and then they get on the wave with me. And I'm going, like, hey, dude, I think there's somebody already riding this wave.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand about position and etiquette or anything. So then I would pull out of the wave, and I'd paddle alongside of them. Or now, if I'm stand up paddling, and say, there's a little bit of etiquette involved here. And I said, when you're riding a wave, if somebody's already riding a wave, that is not your wave.
It's theirs now.
Yeah, and you get out in the lineup and take your turn. That's and if you think it's too crowded here, then go to another spot down the beach.
Yeah.
But
Go back to your original question, Bill.
Some of the other names, some of the other big names that you just ran across over the years that ended up being at the time just a guy, and now they became major.
Johnny Fain was another really big name on Malibu. Johnny Fain and Mickey Dora were like two guys that would be like oil and water. Who was nastier? But Johnny Fain was a fabulous surfer, and again, with Dora in the water, it's the same way too. But there are so many good guys that came out of Malibu, as well as so many good guys that came out of the Seal Beach area. And that would be Robert August. And Robert August, though, before he had his own brand of surfboards, he was on our Jacob surf team. And he and before Donald Takayama ever put his name on a board, he was on our surf team. I got here in the book, I got pictures of him all in our shop, and so forth.
So who was the big name? Jacobs, obviously, and you rode for him. But who were there? A couple other guys?
Well, the area, it was all pretty much geographically based in an area. Kahn was another big name of surfboards. Kahn, and he was in Santa Monica primarily.
Yeah.
And then in Santa Cruz, Owl was Al Chapman. That's where he really started making boards. And as you went south into Newport Beach, and I think it was Gordy, big name surfboard manufacturer. Then from that would be Huntington Beach. Then down towards Dana Point, Killer Dana. Before there was ever the harbor there, I surfed. God, waves at Killer Dana that were 4 or 5 feet overhead and go for all the way into Doheny, and just fabulous surf. But then they came out and they built the harbor there, so we lost 8 or 9 really good surf spots were gone when they did the Dana Harbor.
Did you guys fight for them to stop that, or they just didn't care?
They didn't care because at that time the Surf Riding Association, the surfers, so that there was no real organized group until somebody started really looking at the condition of the ocean and sense of clean waters. Did really surf group come up, and they were primarily pushing for cleaner water, cleaner beaches versus
protection.
Preventing loss of surf spots. But
when did that start? The whole ocean preservation movement, just the people being conscious of what we're doing to the water.
That would have to have been late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
Surfrider Foundation. Surfrider Foundation was the biggest name group, but yet also too what put an awful lot of can't do's on the beach was just basically the Coastal Commission, California Coastal Commission, allowing a person to build a seawall in front of their house over here in Lucadia, in our area here, Encinitas. The houses fall off the cliff and the owners can't get permits to build something to maintain their front yard from falling off, and so. Surfrider Foundation is a big part of trying to preserve the coastline and fight against most of the people who build seawalls around here. It's been anywhere from 10 to 12 years fighting Coastal Commission and fighting also Surfrider Foundation.
We interviewed SOS, Save Oceanside Sand, and it's a big group that's not big. They're really making a movement to really focus on Oceanside, but also beach preservation up and down the coast and what we can do to preserve sand in a way that's builds beaches, and everybody talks about what beaches used to be. I mean, it's not even just a San Diego thing. It's up and down the coast. You hear about it. And, right now there's a big conversation around groins and Oceanside, and then everybody's got a problem with groins. And so it's just like, at the end of the day, eroding cliffs is called a beach being born. But if you put a house on it, we obviously don't want that cliff to erode. But you can't have both. You can't complain about the cliff erosion, but also no beaches, because they kind of one or the other. They go together. And so I don't know what the solution is, but that's a
when I first got down here in 1986, you could walk out here in front where Carlsbad State Beach South is, and you could park your car and walk 50 to 75 yards in pure sand right out to where the water was. Now you can park your car, walk 20 yards, and you're looking at a rock wall of solid rock.
The cobbles.
The cobbles.
Yeah.
And we're just cursed by the cobbles now. And then they built this huge new beach hotel out over here, just fantastic monster. And they excavated 1 trillion zillion cubic yards and put it on the beach. And nature took it all away. And then we've had people come up and say, well, how come all the rocks are here? Is the city going to come and remove the rocks?
The rocks have always been there.
And I said, they've always been there. And I said to these people, I would listen. I said, listen to the noise, the water rushing up and the rocks rolling back. And I said, you know what that sound is? And they go, well, it's rocks rolling. I said, no, that's nature making sand.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way we get sand.
Mm-hmm.
And I would show them a wall over here, and I'd scrub their fingernails across it. I said, that's the same sand that's underneath your feet right now. But that wall over there took 50 million years to make.
Yep.
And I said, that's what you got to understand. This is nature's building us another new beach here.
So just relax for a little bit. 50 million years, we'll all have
nice beach. I know. Gosh, I'll get some good waves again.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, gosh, I got a million questions. But there's one thing that you said I think I got to know more about. The Jacob Surf Team, I mean, just iconic in terms of the history of surf and all the names that rode those boards or were on that team. We're just seeing that red and white label just in the stickers and in the magazines and on a T-shirt. Just, I mean, there's people that have seen it. They have no idea what it is, but you were on that team.
Well, I was fortunate enough and got involved with Hap and a lot of guys in the Hermosa shop at that time. And this is when Dewey Weber was just starting to really push a lot of boards out too. So sitting in the shop one day with Henry Ford, another big name in surfing and history, and Mike O'Neill, these guys who were salesmen, Johnny Goodwin, they were salesmen in the shop. And the guys who were coming in doing the shaping and learning about shaping that time was Donald Takayama, who was surfing really good. And they said, well, look at Dewey. He's making just trains on boards. I can't believe it. He's got so many boards going out the door. And so Mike O'Neill and Henry Ford, these guys said, well, why don't we just put a bunch of our guys out there and do some really neat stuff on boards? And this is when the foam boards, you could get foam of different color. And so we would go in and design a board with different color panels in it, and all I had to have was somebody who wasn't going to use what I didn't want in the color panel. So
when did foam show up?
For me, it showed up, it would have to have been about 57, 58, somewhere there. And I saw my first foam boards, which were Hobies, and they were being pushed by a guy named Bob Cooper at a Long Beach boat show in the 50s. And that's where I saw my first foam boards. And my first foam board came from the Velzy Jacobs Venice shop. And it was a hand-me-down from Henry Ford. He didn't quite like it, didn't do what he thought it was supposed to do. So I said, I'll buy it. So I fell in love with it. And then, as I say, one board lead to another board. And then somebody said, well, we've got all these guys out there, but we don't have any identification on them. And so that's when they designed our jackets. And then not only did we have jackets, but we had trunks and T-shirts and jackets. And we all looked like a bunch of penguins going up and down the beach, all looking the same.
Those trunks canvas?
They're nylon, actually. Nylon and canvas are trunks. It was all marketing, you bet. Yeah. And so where it was Hap doing 5 to 10 boards a week trying to keep up, he had to hire other shapers, and they were doing 150 to 200 boards a week.
And I've heard stories about Mr. Velzy.
Oh,
he had some practices that probably weren't the best.
Well, Dale's primary thing is he liked surfing, but he was really, more than anything, he was a hot rodder. He was a cowboy and a hot rider. He loved riding horses. He loved shooting guns, and he liked having fast cars. And that's when finally...
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
I think I'd like that guy.
And Dale Velzy, he decided that, he was really going to let Hap do his thing. So that's when Hap came out with the Jacobs surfboard logo, which was totally different from the oval one that, was the first original Velzy Jacobs. But the whole thing was, as everyone says now, brand name recognition. And when you see a whole bunch of guys that show up on a beach, and we'd go to a place called in Ventura County called Hollywood by the Sea.
Yeah, Oxnard.
Oxnard, right out there, Ventura, Oxnard.
Yeah.
Unbelievable surf, nobody there, anywhere. And we'd show up and all these other guys who were just starting to surf there, they'd look at this team of guys, 20 guys hitting the water, and they're all wearing the same jackets and same trunks. That's what the first couple of years, too, we started to get body glove. Wasn't body gloves then, it was just a dive and surf.
Yeah, dive and surf.
And we had our own then logoed dive and surf wetsuits. So
who was first? Dive and surf, or was it O'Neill?
O'Neill was exclusive in all of Santa Cruz area.
Yeah.
And so when I'd go up to surf in Santa Cruz, we'd always go to the O'Neill shop and take a look at stuff like that. But Jack was there and always very nice to us all the time. And again, a real good vibe with those guys up there in Santa Cruz. A lot of good surf.
So it seems like this whole community of surfing, even though you guys are from different regions, you guys all got along well.
Yeah, I don't ever remember going to some place and having a group of guys that were from some other manufacturer or club saying, hey, we don't want you guys around here. It was always, hey, wow, look at so-and-so. He's really getting good waves. He's doing something different. We're not doing that. We ought to do that.
All learning from each other.
Oh, yeah, it was great to take off and say angle left and right and do a spinner on the board. Well, guys got doing spinners on the nose,
Yeah, wow.
So I have two questions. When you saw boards go from wood to foam, like what changed in the surfing that you were seeing, not just yourself, but everybody? Like, what did that open up? What doors did that open up for surfing? Radical turns, because the board was so lightweight. And not only radical turns, but also, too, back in the days when Gordy was making boards, and he had this fin on the bottom of the board that looked like the tail of a 747 jet. And everyone said, what's that do? And we realized really fast that yet making a bottom turn was far more efficient with that shape of a fin. So we'd get to a bottom of a wave, and all of a sudden we're climbing right up the face of the wave because the fin let the board climb. Whereas the big wider fins that we had, it caused the board to track in a straight line. Yeah. And we really had to work hard to get these things to crank back. Versus then we went to the narrower fins, and the boards hadn't started. The shortboard craze hadn't started then yet. So, but I think the biggest thing was the lightweight and the maneuverability allow us to make what we call whip turn cutbacks. Whip turn. I'm going to do a whip turn cutback. Yeah, whip turn cutback. And which was, now they call them just big roundhouse cutbacks. Yeah. And that was a big element, big change for a lot of us to do that. I lied. Number two. I have a sub question to that one. Okay. And then I still have my second question. When did rocker come in? When did people, so you started to identify hydrodynamics of like, whoa, fins, and they affect things. When did rocker, the understanding of how a rocker can affect a board be realized? My second surfboard, I had an all-wood Velzy Jacobs, came from a guy named Freddie Fowler. He was one of the early team riders, and they would take a standard to-be shaped build-up of balsa, and he built rocker in the tail so that the board would push down and the nose would climb faster. That was the whole idea behind that. So one day, Freddie was out and he stuffed the thing down a really steep wave and broke the nose off the board. So we went back to the shop. They repaired the nose, and Freddie said, oh, it doesn't ride the same. It's now too heavy in the nose. So I said, well, I'll take that board. That was before I had my first foam board. And I really liked it, but I understood what he was working on then. He was trying to get where you could put pressure on the board to get a more radical turn so it would climb off the bottom of a wave faster. And then the idea of, we didn't call it rocker, was always referred to as scoop. And so you'd be sitting out in the water and you look at some guy's board and you say, man, you got a lot of scoop in that thing. And we'd get off each other's board and float up alongside of each other and look at how the shape of the board floated in the water. And you say, yeah, well, look at your rails are this. Well, why your rails are that way? What's going to benefit there? And then why is your nose so kicked up? Why is there so much scoop in it? We'd say that. And the guy said, well, it keeps me from purling. And I said, well, yeah, I can go steeper down the face of the wave. And we're all riding 9-foot, 9.6 boards. Wow. And so the idea was to prevent purling at the bottom of the wave. It didn't purl as often.
the rocker in the board after that became to be somewhat of a detriment because you start pushing water. You're riding the wave, but you're pushing water, so you're going to go slower. So they took the rocker out of the nose, but you wanted something to nose ride, and that's when they got into concaving the nose. So they scooped out the nose so that the water coming up the face of the wave would hit that concaveness and push out sideways to give the board more lift when you got up the face of the wave. There were a lot of guys, I know that when we'd sit around and you have some guys that had some brains, we start talking physics about why a board does this or relationship to what is happening with the wave at that moment. Why is the board going to do this or do that? And when they really started to analyze how much water was coming up the face of the wave plus the air that was coming up the face of the wave, then the guys started getting into more longer and more radical nose rides. And because they understood when they could get to the nose of the board because there was enough water coming up the face of the wave to support them when they were there.
Wow. That's crazy. You know, it's funny that there's the irony that by the 70s, you know, surfers were considered just these kind of dopey party guys.
Oh, that was my question.
But
draft number 2.
Long hair drinkers.
But what you just said was there was a high degree of intellect within that group of people just to understand these different factors and these variables in physics and hydrodynamics and engineering. Like it was shrouded in these tan guys that are, you know, maybe like to party a little bit, but underneath that, a high degree of intelligence to understand those things and to really work out those problems because there was no like now they kind of know what your board's going to do when you do this and it's going to do that. At this time, it was like we're trying to fix problems and we're testing everything and we're seeing things and it was adjusting and really there was an evolution there. And that doesn't happen just by, it's not magic. Like there's a concerted effort to do that type of thing.
I think we all learned a lot from watching the good guys on our teams or good guys that were from other beaches was we would really analyze why did he go to the nose then or why isn't he going to the nose then or how come he's taking off so deep or why is he shoulder riding when he should be back, you know, just back in the hook somewhere. So a big element was to notice, to read what the surfer did on the wave, if he was doing a good job, and then kind of mimic that when you went out in the water. Look for that same condition in the wave in front of you, and now can you go to the nose? And then when you get to the nose, now how long are you able to stay there at the nose before you need to, as they say, cross-step, backpedal? You know, and it was always you can always tell the really good surfers because they cross-stepped forward and back. They didn't shuffle. Right. There's no shuffling.
Well, I ride longboards that I don't know how to ride, admittedly. I'm a shuffler.
Yeah.
And I don't know what a cutback is. I go straight, and then when the wave ends, I jump on, I sit on the board, and I lean way back and paddle back out.
Well, from all the surfing competition and team competition, and when I was working with kids on next level surfing, I would say to these guys, I'd say, when you're competing in the water for points, you're competing from the moment you start to paddle to the moment you finish the wave. And if you have a clean finish, you're going to get more points than a person who doesn't have a clean finish. And they say, now, who can tell me what a clean finish is? And so they finally realized that when they would paddle for a wave, not stumble to their feet, make their turns and a little bit nose ride, but then when they pulled out, if they just bailed off the board, you didn't complete the wave. And so you left points on the table.
Style.
Mm-hmm. And I said, the guys who are going to get more points are the guys that no matter what, even if the wave section's out, he still pulls the board out through the top of the wave and goes out the back side of the wave. Complete the wave, because you paddled in one direction when you were taking off, and then when you're finishing in a wave, you should be paddling the same opposite direction at the same time. And so I made a complete loop, and you could see their scores going up like crazy because the judges understood exactly what it was like to, wow, that guy out there really completed the wave. And then when we knew we had a tough heat going and there were some guys from another team that were really good, we'd sit there and we'd sit by the judges and we'd go, oh, look at Sam. He's really getting a good bottom turn here. Yeah, why? Oh, good. Nose right, Sam. and then oh, look, nice pull out, totally finished the wave, good job.
Yeah, you're coaching the judges.
Yeah,
It's influencing.
Yeah. You were an influencer before there was social media.
That's right.
Yeah. We did a hell of a job doing that.
Mhm.
And there are so many guys that look at surfing as being a way of life, and there's a lot of them that I know are still surfing with their kids and their daughters and their sons, and just pushing them down and having fun with it.
Yeah.
Do you have a part two?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So
I have a question. After.
You're probably going to want to punch me in the face for asking this.
Go ahead.
But how similar were you said there were a lot of parties, just throw a party, there's an event. How similar were the parties to what you would see in the goofy surf movies of people just hanging on the beach, messing around? Like, was there any similarity whatsoever? Or is that straight
Are
fabrication?
you comparing it to like beach blanket bingo? or
Well, you know,
Very much so.
Gidget?
I liked Annette Funicello. With the original Gidget was Sandra D, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Not very much so. We'd go to C Street, California Street in Ventura.
C Street.
And then after the surf got not too good, then we'd be there with the Ventura guys. We'd go up to where the campground or the fairgrounds were, and somebody would instantly have a keg of beer in the car, and we'd party.
Sweet.
And turn
Best
up
life ever.
and we didn't have, stereos in those days. We had car radios all turned to the same thing and the same sounds coming out, and we'd have a great time.
Will you guys play guitar just like would Kent play guitar or somebody else?
If Kemp was around, Kemp primarily played his guitar. It would be around Malibu more than anything like that. And then he played a lot in local. I hate to use the term bars, but essentially nice areas, nightclubs and stuff like that. So, and the biggest one that he played in, I shouldn't say big one, but played a lot. It was in Hermosa Beach. It was called a Lighthouse.
Oh yeah,
And
still there.
Still there. And they had B.B. King. They had all sorts of guitarists
Huge,
there.
yeah.
Huge guys. And we go there to listen to Kemp play.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was fun.
That's
Okay.
cool.
So you done with the question?
I got a million, but your turn.
Okay, I have a question. Surfers, especially back in your era, were always considered, from what I hear, outsiders. What did society think of you guys?
Oh, it was tough as we were kids. We were looked down at. I mean, we had bleached blonde hair, and because we got the hydrogen peroxide out and put it on our head and got bleached blonde hair.
That's great.
And we went around town. We always had our Huarache sandals on. Our T-shirts were always hanging out, and you never tucked a shirt in. Every little cultural group had their funny things, but the drug environment didn't hit us at all. It was basically just beer drinking,
Right?
And we didn't have any,
All legal.
Yeah, all legal, illegal. But how we were always illegal with that was when I worked for all these different liquor stores as a kid, delivering booze to my friends. So much fun.
Yeah.
And that's why I made a lot of good tips because, they could call in and order, and I'd fill it and take it to the house. So.
How were the police to you guys? Pretty friendly, or were they?
The police were always really friendly to surfers at a group. I never remember seeing any problems with the police and the surf community. The only time we had problems with kids in our community is when kids from the inland, we call them, like from Inglewood, would come in from West, and they would call them the Ho Daddies. The Ho Dads would chase us because we maybe be at a dance in Inglewood somewhere, and we get chased out of some ballroom dancing place there because our band at that time was the Beach Boys. I could pick up the phone and call one of the Wilson brothers and say, "Hey, we're having a big dance at the Eagles Hall in Redondo. Can you guys play for us in 2 weeks?" Yeah, let me look. Yeah, you got it. We got you. Okay, so we had the Beach Boys playing for us. And
so you knew Brian and all that?
Yeah, all those guys.
They didn't like because you guys were taking all the chicks. That's what was happening with your hydrogen peroxide hair.
Well, the Surfer Stomp, and then we'd also go down to Dick Dale and the Deltones and the Rendezvous Ballroom in Newport Beach. We did a lot of that. Travel to dance, travel to surf, travel to dance. And it was all good. We didn't have any problems. We didn't have any.
There was no animosity between the teams, so you didn't say, "Oh, I hope when C's not there."
No,
like we're gonna fight or something.
No, we were always to say, "Well, who are they going to bring new this time? Who they scuttle from some other team to load their team this time?"
I mean, at the nightclubs and stuff when you guys were seeing bands live.
Yeah,
you guys were all just friends.
Yeah, it was never any nasty.
It was such a small community.
Yeah, There was a place in Pacific Beach. It was called Callahan's or something like that. They had 25 cents a plate spaghetti dinners.
Oh,
And-
because you just loaded that place
And
up.
so we would surf wind and sea all day, then go to spaghetti dinner night for $0.25 a plate or something like
Oh,
that.
that's rad. That's awesome.
All sorts of fun.
So when did you mentioned something to me when we first met, but when did you discover Hawaii and making that part of your annual migration around the world?
Well, it was like anything else. Always wanted to surf bigger and better waves, quote, was the idea. And yeah, we had the coast of California to go up and down, but it was cold.
Yeah.
And when somebody would come back from Hawaii and say, oh, God, the water's 80 degrees and the air's 80 degrees, and it's fabulous. A bunch of us, when we were in high school, we said, well, hey, when we graduate from high school, it's the next thing we do the next day is get on an airplane and go to Hawaii. And so one of the guys I ran with at that time, his father was really good in the automobile sales. He owned Chevrolet dealerships and stuff like that. So we got on a plane, myself and 3 other guys, and flew to Hawaii and got a place to rent in Waikiki, and we had a car. And so that was our first exposure to, warm water. It's really nice. But again, no leashes, no nothing. So when we go out and paddle from, say, Waikiki around all the way to Ala Moana, all the different surf breaks out there, Kaisers, Ala Moana, Threes, Outriggers, all those places, we'd ride waves all the way around and have a few coins in our pocket to get a walkaway plate lunch in Ala Moana and then surf our way back. That was, in that time, it was, again, still big, heavy. They were foam boards, but they were all 9-foot boards.
And was there more surfers or less in Hawaii at the time?
A lot less.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, compared to
Wasn't
California.
crowded. Yeah. Oh, still, I'd say California was able to spread out so much, and whereas in Hawaii, there were a lot of breaks, but everybody kind of
Huddled in one spot?
the magnets, because you heard about it, so that's where you went.
Oh, okay.
And so there wasn't that much exploration at that time.
So, okay, a couple times you mentioned leashes and no leashes. Last week, I think in Byron Bay, you have to have a leash now to surf.
Well, there's plus and minuses.
So what's your thoughts on that?
We hated leashes. And the reason we hated leashes is we then started to have to rescue surfers. Now I say rescue surfers, I mean, myself being an ocean lifeguard, we never worried about rescuing surfers because they knew how to swim. Yeah. They had to swim for their board when they lost it. And then all of a sudden when leashes came out, we'd find these guys out who had no swim skills whatsoever. Outside, they somehow would get outside the surf line. They'd break the leash because they weren't very good. And next thing you know, I'm rescuing surfers. So that was the negative about the leash in that part. The positive thing about the leash in that part was that all the surf teams realized, or I should say anybody who was involved in kind of a competitive surf program, whether it be high school teams or a manufacturer's team, is you could get so many more waves in a day because if you fell off, your board was right there again. You didn't have to swim to the beach, freeze your ass, get back on the beach, and paddle back out again.
And probably practice more risky maneuvers.
Oh, yeah.
Led to the advancement.
It didn't matter if you didn't make it or not. You'd get off the bottom of the wave and climb right up the face of it and smack the top of the wave now. And if you made it, great. If you didn't make it, the board was still right there. So that was a positive part about it. It really made surfers on shortboards so much more maneuverable because they learned maneuvers that they wouldn't be able to learn if it wasn't a leash.
But back in the day when you had leashless surfboards, you weren't going to drop into something you weren't going to make, right?
Well, we just pushed it. We knew we'd look down the line and you'd say, well, can I make that?
It made you a better surfer.
Yeah, it made us really read the wave.
Yeah.
And then when we did start using leashes, what they were called push cords. Yeah.
Do you remember seeing your first leash and who had it?
Oh, well, the first leashes that came out were in Santa Cruz. And that's how Jack O'Neill lost his eye. His son was developing the first leashes and they were using surgical tubing.
Yeah, and it came back in.
It made him dead. And that's how he lost his eye. And the thing is,
that's not a laughing matter.
Thanks, kid.
But and they wore them on their wrist, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, then of course we drilled holes in the fins. We tied them to the fin of the board.
Yep.
But we didn't have the plates in the top of the foaming like that, the plugs. And so then the thing that really made the leash actually become workable is when they would take the surgical tubing and then they would shove a cable, not metal cable, but a cord inside.
I had one of those.
Yeah.
My first leash was surgical tubing with
A
rope
cord-
in it.
Yeah, rope in it.
Yeah.
That's so it would only go so far
They were horrible.
and not coming back.
You
at
didn't have one of those?
I had a Bing. Yeah, I had something like that.
Yeah.
With a leather strap, though.
In
Like a leather
79,
strap.
I got a leash that was like that.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
So my question to you is, should the law be involved in surfing? Should they make us wear a leash?
Well, it's like the reason we have kids under the age of 16 wearing helmets riding bicycles is we want more of them to survive. And I think if you look at the number of drownings that happen in a body of water because kids aren't wearing leashes, but if they were wearing leashes, we wouldn't have drownings.
Mhm.
But we don't have the problem of drownings caused because of a leash or not a leash. We have the problem of people who have no skills in the ocean is where our problem is. And if you have a leash, it's going to give you contact with the board, and it may save your life if you're not a swimmer. It's as simple as that. And it'd be like they're in 64, 65, I think, somewhere back there on a Huntington, California State Championships, Huntington Beach. They had all of his competitors wear helmets.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah,
Corky,
why?
Carol, David,
Yeah,
all these guys.
you couldn't surf in the contest if you didn't have a helmet on.
Because they wanted you to shoot the pier or what?
Because if you did shoot the pier
Yeah,
and
protection.
you hit your head,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, that was
It's still going to hurt.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to save your
So
back.
how heavy were those helmets?
Well, I had a custom made one a company called Bell Helmet Company.
Yeah,
they're still around.
Yeah, I had I had a girlfriend at that time that had an uncle that was involved in construction of those. Yeah. And so those helmets, I had a custom made helmet that didn't have a chin strap.
Oh.
And and the reason was I had it fitted in my head. So I put my fingers in the ear openings and I'd pull the helmet apart and snag my head out.
Oh, cool.
And that was really nice. And they were very lightweight. There was no big deal, except if you got it filled full of water, then you had water run your face and your eyes all the time. So that was the pain in the ass with that.
Mm.
But,
Do you ever blame yourself for being partial contributor to surf society today and how out of control it is?
controlled or out of control?
Out of control.
Well, I think that.
And I'm just kind of joking, by the way.
Yeah. I think
Not a serious question.
the biggest problem with surfing today is just we all experienced the problem in the, it would have to have been late 60s, early 70s, when Los Angeles County started building freeways to the beach.
Mm.
And next thing we knew that all the guys lived over in the hills, out in Alhambra, out in Downey, out in God knows
Nuys,
where,
All the
Van Nuys,
valleys coming down Canaan Road.
San Bernardino.
La Mirada.
Yeah, God,
La Mirada. They're the worst in La Mirada.
that's when you realize that the surfing was going to have a problem. And it was because it's number one, they had no ocean skills. They had no concept of what sharing a beach was.
Yeah.
And
Did they acknowledge that you guys had the experience and the knowledge of the ocean? And did you guys try to help them, or was it a lost cause?
I was always a lost cause, and we just let them flounder, and hopefully they go home and didn't come back.
You're not going to let them die, but you let them get scared.
Yeah.
Then you'll rescue them and be like, yeah, you
Yeah.
shouldn't do this. Go
But
away.
then again, you became a lifeguard
Yeah.
helping these people. You were getting paid to help these.
Not really. We had back in those days, it was called the black ball.
Oh, yeah.
And the black ball
Which
went
ruined
up-
surfing.
which meant if you were a surfer and the black ball was up in the area that you surfed, the beach was closed to surfing, and that
Right.
was because there were so many bathers. And so before the black balls came out, and the first black balls started in Hermosa and Manhattan Beach by LA County lifeguards.
Yeah.
And the idea was to lessen the amount of first aid we had to do as lifeguards to surfers running over bathers. And so we had to try to separate them. So we had what we call beach areas between surfing, and a little sign that says surf outside. Inside these two flags is for swimmers only.
Right.
And we had to do that. Then that helped numbers of first aid that I applied on the beach, and it was amazing.
So you were for it.
I was for it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you look at Southern California in the summer, between June and September, a lot of the beaches are closed to surfing.
Yeah, and again, it's only closed because the surfers who are surfing now lack so much etiquette. They don't have a freaking clue,
Okay.
and they'll go right out in a bunch of people.
So my philosophy on that, and I kind of disagree with you, but I wasn't a lifeguard. So you guys both were
We're
lifeguards.
going to gang up on you. Don't make us mad.
My idea is, well, the surfers are here year round. They should have first priority over these people that show up once or twice a year.
Well, I think if anybody wants to enjoy the ocean, they should have access to it. And I think, but they need to understand that wherever they're going to access that beach, that they also need to recognize that there are other people there, and they've got to share their wanting to be there with those people. And I don't think that today the person who drives 50 miles from inland out to the beach, lives in San Bernardino, hops on a freeway and drives out here, they get to the beach. The majority of them don't have much of an idea of, well, there are surfers in the water, and so they just walk out in the water.
They don't know.
They don't have any ideas. So that's why so many of the lifeguard towers in Santa Monica and LA County beaches and so forth, we put signs on our towers, and we try to encourage people to read the signs. And what do the flags mean? Why is that? We had the black ball up there. People would come by and look at me, and they'd be speaking Spanish, and I'd say, looking, hola, señores, señoras, and niños, niñas, mira, look here. And I'd say, agua allá es bueno, no problema. And say, over there, mucho peligro. And I'd learned my Spanish skills were from talking to these people who came out to the beach. They'd be there all day. There'd be a sunrise, sunset. They'd be drinking wine all day long. And next thing you know, I'm risking a drunk.
You're saving their life.
And I'm saving their lives, stuff like that. And now and then I get some people look at me and they'd say, ¿Es problema allá? And I'd say, no. I'd say, grande tiburones, mucho big teeth, big sharks. And they'd stay out of the water over there. That was the whole thing.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Most rescues I ever had, they'd come late in the day.
Oh, yeah.
That's
always.
when, that's when everybody's just tired and drunk and everything else. But changing topics. There's this guy, you might have heard of him, Billy Hamilton.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And you told me a great story about Billy and about kind of how you engaged with him and a young future Laird Hamilton.
Exactly.
At the time wasn't Laird Hamilton, but tell us about that. I think.
Well, in the 60s, when I first couple of trips to Hawaii to surf, I met Billy Hamilton, North Shore guy, and there was this little kid running around, and he says, Billy, who's this? He goes, oh, I don't know. That's a kid, they kind of run the shop here. And my wife and I were thinking about adopting him. So he doesn't really have any parents, stuff like that. And so I said, okay, well, what's his name? And his name is Laird. And I said, okay, well, what, Laird Hamilton then? He says, yeah, he'll probably be Laird Hamilton someday, and we'll probably start surfing with him. Billy Hamilton was already a really good surfer at that time anyway. And so those of you who have known the history of Laird Hamilton and surfing is phenomenal. And so we've always come back now that, when you want to say nasty about him personally or anything, we wouldn't say that, but we'd say, like, why did stand-up paddling surfing become so popular? And we say, well, blame it on Laird.
That's right.
And look at what that guy did on a stand-up paddleboard. And so, and so his skills, his waterman skills and Hawaii skills, wherever he surfed in the water, was you'd sit out on the beach and watch him, because I'd learned something like that. And of course, he was a little kid, and the biggest thing they were worried about him was falling into a bucket of resin somewhere in one of the board shops. But he likes golfing, and he's a snowboarder and all sorts of stuff like that. But
probably plays a little volleyball here and there.
Oh yeah,
his wife,
yeah.
What about Billy? How was Billy?
He was just a really nice, mellow guy. He rode waves, and we all were riding longboards at that time. He was a real smooth surfer, knowing more than anything for his nose riding, a good nose rider.
So going back to Hawaii and you, what was your favorite wave in Hawaii?
Well, I'm a goofy foot, so I lean towards the left, Ala Moana, and then that's where I first met, as we called him, Bird Nest, which was Donald Takayama.
Okay.
And it called Bird Nest because he had so much hair at that time. His huge hair. And he'd be riding with there and all his hair would be streaming back. And he was goofy foot too. So spent a lot of time watching him.
Did you help influence why he moved to California?
No, I don't really know the origins of how he got to California, but I know that all of a sudden I realized that he was going to be on the Jacob surf team with us.
Oh, cool.
And
you already knew of him.
Yeah, we hung around the shop quite a bit. You know, if you didn't have anything better to do, go hang out at Hap's shop in Hermosa and see what big name guys walked through that day.
What was the shop like?
It was really nice. It was it was right on Pacific Coast Highway, and there was a board shape that came out called the 422. And it was really a unique board, first board with hips, and it came out in nose riding, concave nose and with hips. And the 422 came from, that was the address of the shop on Pacific Coast Highway.
Smart. There you go.
And so
I like that.
And then, but just down the street and on the opposite side of the street was Bing, and also was Dewey Weber and E.T., and then up the street, just another mile down on the right-hand side, was Greg Knowles' shop. So there was kind of a hub right there of all the prime South Bay board manufacturers. Was all right in that 2 or 3 miles of the beach.
And going back, did there eventually become some competition between these guys? Or was there plenty of work for them all?
There was tons of work for everybody. But I think that brand name recognition and where a kid went to the beach and what he saw was pretty much dictated the kind of board he would lean towards. So I would say that when there started to be a lot more boards out there and good surfers, like I had a situation that I became really involved in helping a kid learn how to surf. I was a county lifeguard at the time, and my beach lieutenant guy said, "Hey, Jim, I've always got Monday, Tuesdays off. I'm always at San Onofre. I want you to come down to San Onofre, and I want you to mentor to a kid down there that his parents really want this kid to surf." And and they lived in Pacific Palisades. And I said, okay. So I went down there and started in the summer, and I started teaching this kid how to surf. And I wouldn't realize I wasn't teaching him much. He was already pretty well skilled, but his father was Jim Arness. Oh. And I said, "Oh, you're Rolfie Arness."
Yeah.
And so after a couple of years of working with Rolfie, of course, he became a really good surfer and won a world championship in Australia when he won down against really good surfers too at that time. And so I always like to sit back and say, well, I remember talking to Rolfie Arness sitting out at Old Man's at San Onofre. Again, no leashes, no nothing. Correct. So he learned to swim, and we were doing cutbacks and nose rides, and saying, how to do this a little bit better and so forth. And I realized that he had such a good feel for everything he did on the water that I was just there to get encouraging. And luckily enough that I got introduced to the Arness family, and I spent some good times with them at their ranch up in Simi Valley, as well as their house in Palisades, and constantly trying to get in the water with Rolfie. It was really fun.
Was the ranch available for surfing back then?
That's a different ranch.
I know it is.
The
but
ranch.
Was the Hollister Ranch available for surfing then?
Not for open surf. Only if you were a boat or your property owner.
Okay. So it's always been shut down.
Yeah, it's always been a closed thing. And so when I got to go up there, it was I was always going with the Arness family. Same thing with San Onofre, going with them too. Wow, it was all private.
So one last question, because I could go on personally for the next 5 weeks.
Thank you so much for joining us.
But what about with the surf team? What's going on today? I mean, the guys still get together and occasionally talk to each other, and I mean,
I've let you guys, as I say, look at this book. This book essentially was a book, a tribute, the Jacob Surf Team, letters and remembrances for Hap and Pat, and the book goes all the way through from way back in the 50s and the 60s, and who was surfing there, where they were surfing. Basically, it's a group of guys who all wanted to get together and say thank you to Hap Jacobs for all he provided us, and a mentoring guys that would be in jail or dead and gone because of keeping them away from drunks, being alcoholics and all that stuff. And so we all had this fabulous huge dinner at Captain Jack's in Redondo Beach, and it's astounding what this book shows that one person can contribute to surfing.
Wow.
Is that book still available to the public, or has it ever been?
Never available.
Has that ever been in the Surf Museum?
And I don't know which surf museum.
California Surf Museum in Oceanside.
Well, that one there, I don't know if there's one in there or not, but I know that of the surf museums, the one that's up in San Clemente, there's one there,
Okay.
and we did a big tribute to Hap there. There's our pages in here that shows the early team, all the names of the early team, my name's there, and the early team group, and then the existing still team. There's still a Jacob surf team still existing. These are all grandsons of guys my age.
Mhm.
That's so rad.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what just happened? Surf history was documented right now. Stuff
Yeah.
that
I think we
possibly
can come
don't-
back.
Yeah.
I think we got to do a part 2 later.
need to
Maybe
have,
a
like-
part 3.
Well, this might be like a mini series. You might be like on episode 17, you know. But
Yeah.
but I mean, thanks for sharing the stories of like, I mean, things that probably people just
There's
don't
my
know about.
page. There's
Yeah.
my page.
Look at that
so
guy.
awesome.
That's my stuff.
Look at that guy.
And
Like that.
so we have, that.
I wish
local
everyone
system's
could
up there.
see.
What
We'll
page
take a
is that,
picture of
Jim?
that.
What page is that?
This is page 70 and 71.
Page
Yeah.
70 and 71. If
Yeah.
you're in the Surf Museum in San Clemente, you can see it.
And it's just,
But
but there's so many faces and so many guys that I still know, that I still am able to talk to. And also so many, rest in peace guys. So many guys that we've lost.
How many guys are still around?
Of the originals?
Yeah.
Geez. Paul Stroud, Henry Ford, Kenny, myself, Brederson. There's probably a good 50 of us still around.
Wow.
It's spread out Hawaii and all over places.
That's awesome.
Southern into Mexico. There's guys that are spread out all over the place.
wow.
Okay, one more last question. I have to ask this one. Do you think surfing kept you guys healthy, like a healthy lifestyle,
Oh, yeah.
as opposed to
No
being
doubt.
an 8 to 5 guy that's working themselves to death?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it, because you were always looking for a wave to ride. And if you were looking for a wave to ride, you had to be in somewhat good shape to go do it.
Yeah.
And so, and I think also, too, being an ocean lifeguard, the primary reason I wanted to be an ocean lifeguard was I wanted to be at the beach and make money.
There you go.
You made what? Okay, so a lifeguard today is making $20-25 an hour.
Yeah.
Sitting on the sand and collecting girlfriends and
right.
having
There
a
you
hell
go.
of a good time.
Don't tell my. I was married when I was a lifeguard. Don't tell my wife that. She'd be like, "Yeah, if they want you, they can take you."
It put me through college. I mean,
That's awesome.
I worked as much as I could every summer, and monies I earned, I graduated Long Beach State and went to become an educator, teacher after that. But lifeguarding paved my way for getting through school. It's great.
Thank you so much for coming on the Stinky Booties.
Yeah,
Man, that was fun. Jim, you're the best, man.
yeah. Thanks,
Really
Jim.
appreciate
Appreciate it.
Glad to share with you guys. Glad to share.
All started with this guy going, "I went surfing in 1952." I was like, "Whoa, what?"
Are you going to come back on in a few months?
Sure.
With
Hey,
us again?
and one other thing, Jim can catch fish. So, for real.
That was a good tuna trip.
Yeah, that was a good trip. But anyway, we'll get Mike out there one day.
All right, everybody.
All right,
This is Mike, Jim, and Billy. Stinky Billy.
that's right.
All right. we're
Thanks,
outta here.
guys.
Thanks.
A lot of fun.
Bye.
Hey, you guys. Endless Summer box set. This thing is legit. It's authentic. Numbered certificate in it. It has a 5-frame film strip from the original print.
you will literally own a piece of history. It has a specially minted bronze medallion. Dude, that thing's sick. Okay, there's so much more here. Go to the show notes. There's a link on there. Go check this piece of history out. This thing's rad. Seriously. Smithsonian American History Museum has it. It took 4 years of research with 3.5 in production, all hand assembled. This thing's rad. So much to this awesome box set. Remastered DVD, sharper images than the original film, but dude, this thing's so sick. Link in the show notes.